Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Audio Cycling YouTube channel, where today I'm going to be taking a look at Paris-Nice, which is the first race of the Stage Race Championship. Obviously, if you haven't heard about that because if you're new to Velogames, it's a series of, how many, like 9 races, including the Grand Tours, which takes in all of like the World Tour level events, and Paris-Nice and Tirreno Adriatico obviously running side by side. And it's just a really good competition. You know, it's kind of season long. It means that you're going to get a score, and it's going to be like the best, most consistent person wins at the end of the Stage Race Championship. So let's try kick off with a very good Paris-Nice. Usually I don't do too great in this race, but I do definitely make some decent suggestions every year. So let's hopefully hope that that's going to remain true again this year. So Evenepoel at 28, I must admit, when I first opened up the pricing, I thought that Evenepoel is quite expensive at 28 credits. He is the same price as Pogacar was last year, and Pogacar got somewhere like 1,150-ish points last year, 3 stage wins. Can Evenepoel repeat that? I don't think it's as certain, especially since Roglic is here, although you could argue that Vingegaard was there last year, and you know, this is definitely a similar sort of situation, but I favour Roglic a little bit just because of the fact that he just generally tends to beat Evenepoel in stage races. When you look at them head to head, Roglic just has a bit of a better track record, although I will admit I think that Evenepoel has the advantage in the fact that his team time trial I think will be better, because I think his squad with the likes of Catania and Van Wilder and a few others that are just slipping my mind, Moscon as well is in there. But you get what I mean. I think Evenepoel's team time trialing unit is stronger than Roglic's, because they also have like Haller and Dens and Van Poppel in there. So I definitely think that favours Evenepoel, but Roglic at 4 credits cheaper I think can do a very similar, if not a slightly better job than Evenepoel. And Roglic has, well, he does well in this race, although his history of like the last stage has been shaky at best at times. But I think you could definitely pick either of these guys. I think going with one of them is an absolute must. If you want to go with both of them, it does limit your team in other areas for sure. Vlasov I'm not too sure about, based upon the fact that he is 18 credits. There are lots of other high quality riders who are cheaper. Vlasov I just believe is kind of like a domestique here, to be honest, and yeah, he might de facto finish inside the top 10, but when you consider that there are pure leaders for other teams, like an out-and-out leader, it just doesn't really make too much sense to me to be picking Vlasov. Almeida, I believe he's coming back from an illness. He didn't compete in Algarve because of that, and therefore I'm quite sceptical about picking Almeida here, especially when you consider that stages, I believe it's stages 4, and also the final stage, stage 8, have a lot of downhills in there, as well as a lot of climbing, and we know that Almeida isn't the greatest downhiller, so it's, I don't know, there's a lot of signs which are telling me not to go with Almeida, is my train of thinking. Jorgensen was good at the opening weekend, but not like world beating in my opinion. In Omloop he got brought back a bit easier than I expected that he would be, so I'm not too sure about Jorgensen's form. He's not a pure climber. You know, how many stages really suit him over, you know, could Skelmoser be better? Could Bilbao or Boitlago or Gal be better, and they're cheaper? Then yes, I think so. So Jorgensen at 16 again, I'm a little bit sceptical about that. Skelmoser I think has been looking really good. He's finished top 5 in both of the Phone Delhomme and the Phone Ardèche Classics. Correct me if I'm wrong, he might have been just a little bit outside of those. But I like Skelmoser. After all, he won the Tour de Suisse last year. It's very easy to forget how he beat Ayuso and Remco fair and square at that race. And I think that Skelmoser is a really good pick, given his recent form and his desire to become more of a GC rider. I think Paris-Nice is a very good stepping stone for this, although his team time trialing unit probably isn't the strongest, so we might lose 30-40 seconds there. So, I'll try and remember to put up the stage profile somewhere. I always forget to do that. 14 credit riders, none of them particularly entice me, based upon the fact that Gaudu and Rodriguez didn't do that great at Gran Camino. Gaudu was this price last year and he was just insane, 860 something points. So Gaudu Like, yeah, maybe he could turn it around and do really well, but I don't see him doing what he did last year. Rodriguez wasn't really anywhere in Gran Camino, so that's just too much of a risk for me. And Van Wilder, I think, will be a domestique, although as Remco's domestique, he might, kind of very similar to Vlasov, finish inside the top 10 in GC, just based upon the fact that he'll be working at the front of the peloton on the climbs. So I think that Van Wilder is a solid one, especially since he'll get the benefit of the strong Soudal Quick-Step time trial, because I expect he'll hang around with Remco for as long as possible. 12 credit riders, I honestly think that you could pick pretty much any of these 12 credit riders, and I think that they're all good. I think that my favourite ones are the Bahrain duo. I think they're both quite good. The TTT isn't great, but Bilbao was very strong in the UAE Tour. You know, he finished second at the Jebel Hafit. And I think Boitlago was very good in Valenciana. He's got a very snappy finish. He could be going for bonus seconds. I think if it comes down to him in a group at the top of a climb, he's pretty snappy. Then again, you could say Bilbao is the same. So I don't know who they're working for, but I think that both of them are decent options. Gal, again, suffers from the fact that his team isn't good at team time trialling, but he was good in the Faune d'Olonne Classic, or Faune Ardèche, I get the two mixed up. He was good in one of them, and he was a real breakout performance last year. And I think that his climbing ability really sets him in good stead to get a top 10 in this race. Coy, for me, it all depends if he can make stage 1. You know, if he makes stage 1, he'll probably be worthwhile. Stage 2 is more of an absolute definite sprint. So therefore, Coy, it really depends. If he only competes in stage 2, he's not going to be worthwhile. So you really have to judge whether you think he's going to make stage 1 or not. Pedersen, on the other hand, I think is an absolute must for teams. You know, stage 1 and 2, fantastic for him. And also some of the other stages, like it's more like the intermediate rolling stages. I think Pedersen's really good. He might try go for the points classification in this race. So I think Pedersen's really strong. And then you have the UAE boys of McNulty, Soler and Vine, alongside Almeida and Finn Fisher-Black. I have no idea who their leader is. They all have question marks. You know, Jay Vine and McNulty both somewhat capitulated up the Jebel Hafit, so therefore I'm sceptical about them in that sense. I'm sceptical about Almeida because of his illness. I'm sceptical about Finn Fisher-Black because there's lots of repeating climbs, whereas we've only really seen him do well on like single climb, like big watts per kilo efforts at the end of the day. Soler, I guess, has the least question marks, but he is always just so flaky that I'm not really willing to commit to that. Saying that, UAE Team Emirates have a fantastic team time trialling unit in this race, but I'm just not sure who their leader is going to be. I'm going to expect that it'll be Jay Vine, but honestly, don't quote me on that. I think it could be any of them. 10 credit riders, we're moving into a mix of semi-GC but sprinter types. You've got Decline, very good at UE Tour, finished second 3 times. You've got Arnaud Delis, very much like Pedersen, very good at climbing, or surprisingly good at climbing, considering he's a sprinter. And given that the classics are here, I think he'll be in good form. Groenewegen, a pure sprinter. Groves, more of a better climber type. Jakobsen in here as well. For me, I would be picking Delis or Groves. I just think the fact that Groenewegen and Jakobsen don't climb very well limits them to only getting points on stage 2. So therefore, pick one of the guys who can climb a little bit better. I probably wouldn't pick the semi-GC options of Plapp, Kelderman, Guerrero, Groscharkner, etc., because I just think that there'll be more domestiques. You could argue Plapp because he will likely be the leader for Jaco Alula, but he has been quite inconsistent in being a GC rider over the last couple of years, so I'm not really willing to put all of my eggs into that basket. 8 credit riders, more sprinters in the shape of Ackerman, Bennett, Cockard, De Maar, Hofstetter, Max Canter, Michael Matthews, Lawrence Piffy, Gerber Tayson, Matteo Trentin and Marlene Vandenberg. So many you could choose from. Again, I'm going with the philosophy of pick the guy who can climb a little bit better. So Cockard, I think, is a really good one. I think Matthews is good. I think Piffy's good. I think that Gerber Tayson, maybe doesn't climb like brilliantly, but he can make stage 1, but definitely a good one for stage 2. Vandenberg, a very good one as well because he can climb quite well. Maybe you could argue Van Poppel, but I just favour the likes of Piffy, Vandenberg and the other ones that I just mentioned. Finn Fisher-Black, like I said, quite a rogue one at 8. I think he is good value here, but with UAE seemingly the leadership, not crisis, but uncertainty, I'm not willing really to put all my eggs into a Finn Fisher Black basket, just because I feel safer getting the sprint points from Matthews or Piffy or Vandenberg, for example, rather than banking on the GC, especially somebody who is a little bit unproven as a GC rider. That's just my take on it. 6 credit riders. There's a lot of good talent here, but there's not really anybody who stands out massively to me. They're all decent. They'll all score you. There's plenty of riders here who will score you like 100-ish points, but there's not many who will score you more than that. So, picking some names out, Will Barter. Given that Movistar don't have a massive leader in this race, you could say Guerrero for sure, but I think that Barter's got this fantastic ability as a breakaway rider, so I think that Barter's quite good for that sense. Bergadeau usually goes he's won a stage of Paris-Nice before. He usually think back to Dauphiné last year, he was in the break for one which Zimmerman won. I think that Bergadeau gets in the breaks quite well in these French World Tour level stage races. Alongside him, Catania, given that he'll get the assist points from Evenepoel, he'll likely get 30 points for the TTT as well. Charmig, I think that he's quite good too as a good climber for Astana Kazakhstan, but they have so much talent here in Lutsenko and Scaroni and Harold Tejada as well. It's hard to tell who they will be going with, but Charmig is definitely worth considering. You've also got FDJ, who bring in some good talent with Genietz, but also Quentin Pacher. Both of these guys I really like, given that Gaudu hasn't looked particularly... Well, he didn't look strong at Gran Camino, therefore I think that Groupama could have a bit more freedom to get into the breakaway, and I think that Pacher was strong at Gran Camino. He finished in 8th place in GC, and also Genietz, who of course had a very good start to the season at the GP Marseillaise, so therefore I think that both of those are pretty decent to be picking too. Jungels, very similar to Catania in the assist points, and also the team time trial element of that. You could say Jason Osborne, because he's quite a good climber for Alpecin. Oliver Narsson was very strong in the opening weekend, but with Bennett here, and Aurelien Palipentler and Felix Gall, I think his opportunities are quite limited. I'd say that Scaroni is my favourite 6 credit rider, based upon the fact that he has been very good so far this year. He was top 5 on that final stage of Algarve. He was just outside the top 10 in GC, and that's only because of his poor time trialling. And he did good in the Trofeo Laiguelia as well. So I think that Scaroni is really good. Sobrero, very similar to Catania and Jungels. You could also go with Dlizan Hestel, because he was sprinting at the Vuelta last year, if you remember that. So he could be a sprinter for Total Energies. For sure, so that's certainly one to be watching out for. And lastly, I'll say Yanis Voisard, because he was 13th in GC, I believe, at Volta Algarve, and therefore he could certainly be a top 20 candidate, which could be enough to sneak you somewhere near 160, 170 points if he does well in some stages. 4 credit riders, Julien Bernard usually gets in the breakaway to get some KOM classification points, so it's usually kind of quite a safe one to be betting on. Jordan Gehat. I apologise for the French pronunciation, but he's been pretty good recently. The Faune Ardèche, he finished in 8th place. Tour de Alpes Maritime, he was 6th or 7th in one of the stages there. Given that Total Energies don't have a massive leader, he looks like a pretty decent climbing puncher-esque rider, so therefore 4 credits is pretty low risk for him. Geese Lamerazor is pretty much the only climber DSM, Firmenich Post and I'll have, so therefore I expect him to have some freedom. He was also good in Algarve. Remember that Wout van Aert Ben Healy breakaway, he was in there as well. 20th in GC, so I think that he's quite a good one to be picking too. Then there's also Rajovic for Barney Victorious. He is, I think, the fastest rider they have. Given that he was top 10 in some sprints at the Alula Tour, I think that Rajovic is pretty safe for that second stage, so long as there's no no crosswinds going on. So that's also a pretty low risk one. And Bahrain are usually quite good at getting top 5 in Team GC too, and especially since they've got Boitago and Bilbao here, I think that's pretty safe as well. And other than that, you're really looking at guys to randomly get in a breakaway. So a lot of the EF boys, for example, because they don't really have a big leader in this race. This is my team at the moment: Roglic, Boitlago, Skelmoser, Bilbao, although I might certainly change out Bilbao for somebody like Jay Vine, for example. Piffy, Pedersen, Lane Razor, Scaroni and Pascher, although I might certainly change out Pascher, I think, for somebody else, but that's pretty much the only alterations that I might make. So you kind of got 4 GC riders, 2 sprinters, and then some boys for the breakaway. But let me know what you're thinking in the comments section down below. Are you thinking of going with Roglic and Remco? And if so, how is the rest of your team shaping up? Or if you're not, just put your team in the comment section and I will try to get back to you on any on any queries that you might have. And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!